Do you not find it strange how we've literally got to contain the sea? Every sea line has a sea barrier. We have to contain the water so it doesn't flood our land. Now we think that we're living on a ball spinning 1,000 miles an hour around the vacuum of space, where gravity literally holds all of the water to its surface. Yet it doesn't stop a bumblebee flying round with no gravitational pull. So why do we have to contain the water? Because if the water was contained, it would stay sea level, and the horizon would always stay horizontal. Crazy that, isn't it, guys? Much love, stay true, and I'm as fictional as a dinosaur, baby.
You know, it's really hard to tell if flat earthers are serious or not, if they're a Poe, because there's no space to go. There's nothing more ridiculous than what flat earthers actually say and think. If you want to really plumb the depths of conspiracy nonsense that they get into, look at Professor Dave's recent video documenting the reaction to the Antarctic expedition. You know, they actually paid for, I think it was 4 flat earthers to go to Antarctica and look at the sun 24 hours, you know, being, this is in the middle of our winter, their summer. You know, the sun was above the horizon for 24 hours a day, pretty much disproving a flat earth and proving that we live on a globe earth. And the reaction to that is just absolutely astounding. There's no limit to their denial of just reality right in front of their face. So here, you know, again, this is not, if he is making fun of flat earthers, you can't tell, because this is exactly as dumb as what the stuff that the flat earthers say. Apparently this guy's never been to the beach, you know, just assuming that he actually believes the stuff that he said. Not every bit of shoreline has walls on it. Those walls are not there to keep the ocean in. They're there to keep the shoreline from eroding. Shorelines are dynamic, but we like to build things next to the shore. And so we want to stabilize the shorelines. We will put a wall there. Also, perhaps this guy isn't aware of something called the tides, you know, where waters rise and fall. And some locations, those tides, when they come in, they would flood inland, and then the water goes away when the tide goes out. You could see this in parts of the shore where there aren't improvements like that. But then there are some locations where, again, we want to build stuff there or whatever. We don't want the tide to like flood inland every time there's a high tide, and so we build a retaining wall. You know, like we built a whole city below sea level in Louisiana, right, New Orleans, and we got to build a lot of walls there to keep the ocean out. That's not because we have to contain the ocean. It's because we want to build stuff where that would otherwise normally flood. You know, so the other thing, you know, I'm not even really sure what his point is about the horizon. You know, sometimes the flat earthers say, like, the horizon looks flat. You can't see the curvature of the earth. But of course you can see the curvature of the earth. There's plenty of situations where there are bridges or other structures where you could see it going around. You know, the curve, it has to be big enough, because obviously the earth is big, so it has to be large enough for you to actually see the curvature, but you can see it. Absolutely. You could see ships disappearing, you know, over the horizon. So that's not a valid point as well. The bumblebee thing, I mean, does he think bumblebees levitate? What is that? What he thinks is happening? Bumblebees are flying with aerodynamics. They have to produce a downward force equal to the gravitational force, you know, in other words, to push them up to counteract the force of gravity trying to pull them down. Yeah, that's what flying is all about, right? We're not flying a plane. We're not levitating. There is something called aerodynamics. So, and you know, again, I've spoken to flat earthers about this. Apparently, they don't believe in gravity, which is absolutely amazing. You know, they think that, oh yeah, the Earth is accelerating at 1g through space, and that's why we feel the acceleration of gravity. Of course, we know that that's not happening for many reasons. But I guess, does that mean that the whole universe is accelerating at 1g because we're not moving through space at that rate? And if it is, what does that even mean? Why is the Earth flat when all the other planets are spherical? Again, you could go so far down this rabbit hole, you'll lose your mind at some point. But what they don't have, what the flat earthers don't really have, they cannot have a coherent explanation of exactly what's going on. They just have their models, and then they just sort of wave away all the inconsistencies. They'll throw out terms like, it's perspective or whatever, but they don't really have any kind of coherent model. It's like, oh, well, if the sun never really truly sets, how come if you watch the sun set on the horizon, you could see the sun disappearing below the horizon? At some point, there's like only half the sun is visible, etc. They don't really have an answer for that. They just say, it's perspective. No, that's not how perspective works. You can't just throw terms like that out to explain away incontrovertible evidence that disproves what you're saying. Right? So anyway, this is a bottomless pit of nonsense, an absolute bottomless pit of nonsense. And they do, if this guy's real, he's right in the sweet spot of flat earthers. If this is an April Fool's joke or he's making fun of flat earthers, he did it spot on. It's indistinguishable from the level of nonsense that they say. It's beyond satire. But there you have it, I guess.